Welcome to our live video webinar today on our temperature sensor line. My name is Brant Kasbaum. I'm a sales engineer here at ACI. I've been with ACI for about 11 years now, and we're going to go through our full temperature sensor product line and answer any questions that you may have. Like Matt said, this presentation is being recorded, so if you can't stay for the entire length of the presentation, everyone who is signed in now will get an email link, and in a little while, probably tomorrow, with a link to the full presentation, and it will also be archived up on our website as well. So we're going to get started today by going through the process that we use to build and manufacture and assemble our temperature sensors, and this is a process that differentiates us from a lot of the other competitors out there, and it starts by how we crimp the raw sensing element to the lead wires. You can see here in this slide, and also I've got one here in my hand. It's very small. These raw thermistors are very fragile, and you can see it's in blue here. And we crimp them to the lead wires, as you see here. And we also use a higher grade lead wire. It's an etched Teflon lead wire compared to what a lot of other people are using is PVC. The Teflon wires are more thermally conductive, and so you get a faster response time than a lower quality PVC wire. And we crimp that wire to the raw sensing element, and that creates a more secure connection and helps protect their very fragile raw thermistor. And you can see that this assembly is very small. It's less than the size of the tip of a pen. And then once we do this process, we then take it and epoxy it into a small plastic cup that looks like this. And the epoxy material, this is our first encapsulation step. The epoxy material that we use is a very high grade epoxy. It is extremely thermally conductive, and it has a very low moisture content. And it's designed specifically for temperature sensor encapsulation. So once we encapsulate the thermistor into the small plastic cup, we then epoxy this cup into its finished probe. Like you see here, this cup would go inside this probe, and then the final step is to take that probe and assemble it into its finished enclosure, whether that be a duct or outside air or an averaging or an immersion sensor. At each step in the process, and in other parts in the process as well, we're testing these sensors individually to ensure that they're working along the process. We don't do like batch testing where we build 100 sensors and then randomly pull out 5% of them or 10% of them and test them. Every sensor is getting individually tested at multiple points in the process to ensure that the sensor is working. And so, that simply means that you shouldn't have any out-of-the-box failures with ACI's sensors. And so if you're going to a job site that requires 50 duct sensors, you don't have to order 55 and hope that you find 50 that work. Each of these sensors are being individually tested at multiple points along the manufacturing process. So these are things that we do that they take a little bit of time to do. For example, this double encapsulation process, that's 2 times that the sensor is being epoxied, and that means it has to dry in between each time. So this is a lengthy process, and here's a short video that shows a little bit of the encapsulation process and how it's done in a machine that is in a vacuum, so there's no air bubbles, there's no chance of moisture getting down inside of that probe. Moisture is the killer of all thermistors. Or not just thermistors, all sensors in general. They're very fragile, and so any little bit of moisture or condensation down inside the probe can cause a sensor to short. And so we use an automated process that epoxies the exact correct amount of epoxy and does it without any air bubbles or moisture infiltration down inside of that sensor probe. So with all of this said, these are questions that I would suggest you ask of your other vendors. We know that there are a lot of sources for temperature sensors, and a lot of people view them as a commodity type product. And There are some things that we do that differentiate the product and get you a more higher quality product than a lot of our competitors out there. So these are questions that I suggest you ask your other vendors. What types of lead wires they're using? Are they single or double encapsulated? What type of epoxy or potting material are they using in their temperature sensors? Your customers are very demanding of you, and they have high standards for you. And so we suggest that you hold your vendors to those same high standards and demand that they provide you a high quality product that is going to last a long time, because you're putting your name on your jobs and on the buildings that you're working in, and you're putting your reputation on those jobs as well. So we wouldn't want you to sacrifice your reputation because you save 50 cents on a duct sensor. So ask these questions of your vendors and demand that they provide you a very high quality product. And if you want more information on the technical specs of the epoxy material that we use and the metal in the probes, for example, just let me know. I'm happy to provide all of that information to you anytime, and it's a definite cure for insomnia as well. We're going to move on now, and we're going to talk about some of the specific enclosures and configurations in which you can find our temperature sensors. I'll get down off of my soapbox talking about the sensor quality, and we'll talk about some of the specific sensor enclosures and housings that you can find our sensors in. Start with our wall mount sensors. This one that you see on the left, this is called the Infinity enclosure. It's signified by an R in the part number. So it's called the Infinity or the R enclosure. This one is the Aries enclosure, and it's signified by an R2 in the part numbers. They're both designed to fit over 2x4 junction boxes. The R2 or the Aries enclosure is simply a newer style that's a more modern looking, and I think it's a better looking enclosure. It's a true bright white, whereas the Infinity enclosure is it's a beige or an off-white. The Infinity enclosure is available in other colors as well. You can get it in black and white as well as the beige. And for both of these enclosures, we can put your logo on the faceplate of these, either your logo or your customer's logo. And if you want additional information on that, please get in touch with me or your sales engineer, and we'd be happy to move forward with getting your logo or your name on these wall sensors. Next is our standard duct sensors, and that looks like this. And this is the standard plastic box is our default enclosure for our duct sensors. And these duct style sensors are available in numerous different enclosures. And here's a short video that shows the different enclosures and what they look like. Starting with our galvanized box, that's the GD in the part number. This is the aluminum NEMA 3R bell box, or BB. This is the NEMA 4X box. This is the Euro box. And then this is the plastic box. And for the record, those are not my hands and not my purple fingernail polish there. So the duct box, this is a new enclosure for us. It's 2 or 3 years old now, and it features a hinged cover that's very fast and easy to install. And so you don't have to worry about having to remove and reapply multiple screws on the face of the enclosure. And it's very lightweight and durable as well. So the lightweight saves cost on shipping. So, these are typically higher volume type products. So if you're ordering 50 or 100 of these, if they're in metal boxes, that can add to the freight cost as well. Our outside air enclosures is our Euro box, which looks like this. It's a circular shaped gasketed enclosure. It's a watertight, water or weatherproof enclosure that is very easy to install. The cover simply twists off, and it's a gasketed enclosure that maintains a watertight connection. One thing I'll point out as an application note when you're installing this sensor is, if you look closely here, you can see that there are 2 rings for the knockouts, and there's an inner ring and an outer ring. We include a watertight fitting with this enclosure, and that watertight fitting fits this inner ring. So it's occasionally over the years we've had people send sensors back and say, oh, your sensor leaks, it's not watertight, and it turns out that they had knocked out that outer ring. It's a larger knockout that fits a 1/2-inch conduit, but the watertight fitting that we include with it fits that inner ring. Next is our strap-on sensors. This is designed to fit 2 to 5 inch pipe, and it's got a spring-loaded copper plate there that secures a nice tight connection to the pipe. The straps can be expanded. You can add multiple straps to this enclosure to fit on pipes larger than 5 inches as well. We also have a solution for smaller pipes that I'll mention in just a minute. Next are our immersion sensors, and they fit into a standard Thermowell that is 1/2 inch NPT. So this is a 1/2 inch thread here, and the external thread of our wells is 1/2 inch as well. One application or ordering note when it comes to our immersion wells is we measure our immersion sensors and our immersion wells from below the thread of the well. So from here on to the tip of the probe. For example, this is a 4-inch well, and that's measured 4 inches from here to here. Now the probe itself, when it's screwed into this well, it's actually a 6-inch probe because the probe goes all the way to the end of the thread. So oftentimes someone will pull a sensor out of an existing well, measure it and say it's 6 inches long, and then say, call me and say, hey, Brand, I need a 6-inch immersion sensor, and we send them a sensor that's a little bit longer. So we measure it from below the thread of the well to the tip of the probe, the actual insertion length. So on our data sheet and on our ordering grid, when it says a 6-inch immersion sensor or 4-inch, that's from here to here. Next is our averaging sensors, and they're available in a couple of different elements. We have a copper element, which many of you are familiar with. We have what we call a flexible averaging, which is a plenum-rated wire element, which I can show you on this slide here. And I'm going to show you a short video here that shows some of the equipment that we use to build our copper averaging sensors. Now, a lot of our competitors don't use copper, they use aluminum. And copper is more thermally conductive than the aluminum, and it's also antimicrobial and antibacterial. So you're overall getting a better quality sensor and a more responsive sensor when you're using copper in your averaging sensors than when you're using aluminum. Now, there are some applications where you may not be able to use copper. That's where we go to our flexible averaging, that plenum wire element. That is, it's more bendable and more flexible than the copper element, so it'll help you to fit into tighter spaces than the copper. And the flexible plenum element is a little more cost effective as well. It's a little less expensive than the copper elements. And here's a slide that shows how each of these sensors looks in the standard enclosures that we have available. The plastic box that's signified by the PB and the part number. The NEMA 4X box, that's signified by 4X in the part number. Galvanized box is signified by GD in the part number. And then the NEMA 3R bell box, which is signified by BB in the part number. Standard lengths for our averaging sensors are 8, 12, 24, and 50 feet for thermistors. And for RTDs and accompanying transmitters, we have the ability to go up to 100 feet for those. We have also the ability to do what we call a rigid averaging sensor, which is going to look real similar to the duck style sensor that you see here, but it's going to have a longer probe, 18, 24, 36, or even 48 inches in length, and then have multiple sensors along the length of that probe to get you an average of those multiple sensors. And so that works well in even tighter spaces where you may not have the space or the room to stretch out an 8 or 12 or 24 foot bendable averaging sensor. You can use a straight rigid probe in that place as well. Button sensors are a new enclosure. We've had those for probably 3 or 4 years now. It's a very small, discrete way to measure temperature in a space where someone may not want a large 2x4 box cover, or they don't have a 2x4 box available. So these are commonly used to go, and they're shipped with sheetrock anchors or drywall screws, so they can go right through sheetrock. They're commonly used in ceilings as well, right through ceiling tiles or through sheetrock into ceilings as well. Very small, very simple way to measure temperature that isn't going to stand out so much on the wall. We also have hazardous area sensors or enclosures. These would be Class 1, Div 1 rated explosion-proof enclosures that can be used in duct mount, wall mount, and immersion sensor configurations as well. Our wall mount LCD unit is called the Tuck 2, and this is a nice a backlit large LCD available in literally millions of different configurations, very much user configurable options. User can change what is displayed on the screen, what the set point values are, things like that. So this is a nice, sharp, bright LCD that gives you some a nice display on the wall and gives your user some options to control as well. And we also have the ability to put your logo on the front of this unit as well. This is I mentioned briefly a sensor that can be strapped onto a pipe that's for smaller pipes than the 2 to 5 inch. And this is our newest of all of our configurations, and we call it simply the pipe mount. It's a short brass, a 1 inch brass probe that is crescent shaped, so it fits nice and snug up against a smaller pipe, anywhere from a 1/2 inch up to 1.5 inch diameter pipes. And we ship it with wire ties that fit right into that little notch you see there, so it gives a nice, tight, secure connection to the pipe for those real small pipes that a standard strap-on type sensor won't fit. Next is our flush mount stainless plate sensors, and on this unit we epoxy the sensor using that same epoxy material that we use for our probe style sensors. We epoxy the sensor right to the back of this plate, so you get a good, quick, responsive temperature measurement conductively through the plate, and it's a much more rugged and durable enclosure than a standard wall mount sensor like this. So this works well in areas where there might be water splashed on it, or in schools or gyms or places like that where it might where you need a more rugged enclosure than the standard wall mount enclosure. I want to take a minute before we carry on to our high and low sensors to remind everybody of our upcoming webinar series. We're going to be doing webinars on our various product lines once a month for the next several months. The next one on our list is August 24th, and we're going to be covering our gas sensor line. I'm going to be joined by Travis Fry, another sales engineer here at ACI, and we're going to be going through our gas sensor product line, answering questions much like we are today. So that's something to put on your calendars, and we'll send out invitations for that here in the coming weeks as well. In addition to our standard thermistors and RTDs, we also offer high and low temp sensors that can go from as low as -200C on the low end for our low temp up to a high of 743F on the high side. And these can be either standard RTDs, or they can be paired with analog transmitters to get you a 4 to 20 signal as well. We have, on the low side, we have freezer sensors with thermal buffers, or these glycol bottles, and these are commonly used in coolers and freezers that and paired with this glycol bottle. And basically what that does is the glycol solution, or this bottle, is filled with glycol or some other type of thermal buffer, and it essentially just slows the response time. So if you have the sensor by itself in a freezer that, say, is 20 below zero, and someone opens the door to that freezer, the sensor gets a shock of room temperature air, it could send the system into alarm. Well, in this application, the probe is then stuck inside of this bottle that's filled with a glycol or similar type solution, and it acts as a buffer to slow the response time, so it can more accurately react to the actual temperature changes in the freezer or cooler. And we now recently, just in the past couple of months, started the ability to pre-fill these solutions with a food grade quality glycol solution, so we can ship these bottles and probes completely assembled with glycol solution, so you don't have to source that locally. You can have these taken right to a job site and install without having to source additional product. They're available in numerous lead lengths: 6, 10, 30, 50, 100-foot lead lengths, and to extend as far or as close as needed. Some simple enclosures that we do very regularly are bullet style probes, and that's just a simple 1-inch metal probe. We also have what we call a raw sensor, which is built the exact same way as our other sensors, and just instead of putting it into a metal probe, it's in a small plastic cup. And so these are very low cost solutions. They can be strapped to pipes. They can be for temporary installations, very low cost solutions to measure, get an accurate, reliable temperature sensor reading. Our Infinity enclosure, or the R enclosure, is also available with an LCD upgrade. And that's just a simple 4-digit LCD readout that can be added to any of the standard room sensor enclosures. Little birdie tells me that the R2, or the Aries enclosure, we're working on adding an LCD option for that. That's in the pipeline, and it will probably be a little ways down the road, but we're hoping to have that available sometime in the future. Our Thermowells we talked about briefly a minute ago when I went through the lengths of our Thermowells. Our standard well lengths are 2.5, 4-inch, and 6-inch, and again, that's from the base of the thread to the tip of the probe. And we have, by custom order, we do have longer Thermowells available as well, up to 24 inches. As of today, our standard Thermowell is a 2-part fabricated well, where the probe part of the well is welded to the thread part of the well. However, that's changing, and sometime in the very near future, we're going to be going to an all one-piece well. Like this one, for example, is we call it a machined well. It's cut out of a solid piece of stainless steel, and that's going to be our default. And very soon you guys will be getting information on when that changeover is happening. Right now we're just building up our inventory in order to be able to make that change. So the machined wells are just a more sturdy, it's a one-piece well. It's suitable for high flow rates and very high pressures as well. We also have other materials, Thermowells available, like titanium and mono wells that are compatible with other different types of chemicals and salt water or marine water that our standard stainless wells aren't compatible with. So if you've got an unusual application, or you're not sure which chemicals are compatible with it, or you're dealing with salt water or marine water, just give me a call, give your sales engineer a call, and we can make sure that we get the right product to you that's going to get you the longest lasting Thermowell for that application. Here is a list, brief list of all of the different sensing elements that we can do, and this is not an exhaustive list. So there's a number of other sensing elements that we can do and provide that aren't on this list. This is basically to say that no matter what sensor you come across in the field, if you need to replace it, chances are we've seen it before. And so we can cross-reference pretty much any type of thermistor or RTD out there. These are some of the more common ones that are listed here. And if you've come across something that you haven't seen before, let us know. Chances are we've seen it, and chances are we've built sensors that have that thermistor or RTD in it in the past. Now we're going to go through our data sheets and ordering grids. So to help familiarize you with our data sheets, and so when you place an order with us, you can be confident that you're getting the actual part that you wanted. So all of our data sheets here, this is an example of our 1K nickel RTD data sheet. And all of the data sheets that we have on our website or in our catalog are all 2 pages long. On the first page, we have some pictures of what the various enclosures and configurations look like. And on the second page, we have the technical specifications and then the ordering grid that's on the bottom of the second page. So we're going to take you step by step through the ordering grid of how you would build a part number for a duct sensor. So it starts with the configuration that you're looking for, and in this time we're going to select D for duct. Then you move on to, you would fill that in section A on the ordering line. Then you move on to the probe length that you want. In this case, 6-inch. Our standard duct sensor probe lengths are what you see here. And I'll point out too that we do custom and specialty parts and part numbers for customers all day, every day. So if there's something that you're looking for that you don't see on this list, doesn't mean that we can't do it. For example, if you wanted a 24-inch average or a duct sensor, we've done that. We do it regularly. Other end, if you wanted a 2-inch duct sensor, we've done that, and we do that regularly as well. So these are simply the most common parts that we have, and we've got, I think, over 10,000 part numbers in our system. So if you come across an odd duct, chances are we've probably come across it in the past as well. So back to our ordering grid. So we've selected a 6-inch probe length for our 1K nickel duct sensor. So we filled that in here. Then we're going to move on to the type of enclosure that we're looking for. And these are the standard enclosures for this duct sensor. The PB is the default enclosure, so that's what we've selected here. And these are pictures of what the other enclosures would look like as well. Some of these have NEMA ratings, some of them don't. So if you have a job that is calling out a specific NEMA rating, let us know, and we can help you select the correct part that satisfies the specifications for your particular job. So in this case, we've selected the PB enclosure. So this is our final part number here. In this case, our lead wires aren't applicable because with an enclosure, the lead, you would terminate your connection inside that box. So we don't need any extended lead wires for this one. So that one we would leave blank. So this is our finished part number, A/1K-NI-D-6-inch-PB. And then this is what you would get, a 6-inch duct sensor with a plastic box with a 1K nickel element. When you're going through our ordering grid, it is important that you move across the lines horizontally. So the options that are listed will follow horizontally from the configurations that are listed on the left-hand side of the ordering grid under column A. With that said, that concludes our presentation today. I'd like to invite you to the next presentation on gas sensors, which is August 24th. And now we're going to open it up to the Q&A session. So if you've got questions, please send them in. And I will start going through and answering some of these questions here. First question that we have is, can you do a webinar specific for my salespeople? Yes, absolutely we can. We work with a number of different OEMs and different distributor groups, so we'd be happy to tailor a webinar specific to you. If you're a CG&A distributor, we'd be happy to put together a webinar for your sales team. If you're an Allerton dealer or a Schneider Electric dealer, we'd be happy to put together a webinar for you that goes through the OEM part numbers that we build for those particular dealer networks. So definitely get in touch with me. You see my contact info on the left-hand side of your screen, or get in touch with your sales engineer, and we'd be happy to do that. These webinars are pretty easy to do, and we can put them together with a short amount of lead time. How do I set up an account on your website? Yeah, we do have, we offer online ordering, and so you do have to have a login to the website in order to be able to do that. And to do that, you would just simply let your sales engineer know, and we would email you with the login info to get into the website, so then you can place orders online, or you can get your pricing online through the website as well. So email me, email your sales engineer, and we can get that taken care of right away. One thing I forgot to mention that I'll highlight now is I've mentioned myself and I've mentioned our other sales engineers. Every customer here at ACI has a sales engineer that's assigned to them. If you don't know who your sales engineer is, let me know, and I'll make sure that you get in touch with that person, and he or she reaches out to you with their contact information. Your sales engineer here at ACI is responsible for handling all aspects of your relationship here with ACI, whether that's technical questions, ordering, invoicing, shipping, tracking. Your sales engineer is your point of contact here at ACI, so it's important that you know who that is. Can I get our company logo on your products? If so, which products? Yes, you can. We can do your custom logo or your company logo on our wall sensors, and we also have the ability to do them on some of the like this Euro box and our standard duct box as well. To do that, there's a couple of different file formats that we would need, or that our printer needs and is able to work with, and so we can definitely get you info on that as well. When requesting a company logo, is there a quantity requirement? Sometimes. There are certain logos or certain enclosures that our printer does have an order minimum. And so usually it's either 100 or 250 pieces. But typically we don't require a customer to order or take possession of all of those at one time. Once a customer decides to move forward with their logo, typically, we would stock the logos here and then add them to their orders going forward. And our printer, assuming that we can get your company logo in the appropriate format, our printer doesn't charge setup fees for that. So usually there's not an order minimum. There are certain things that may require an order minimum if the logo is really complicated, or if there's number of colors or certain enclosures, but most of the time there's not an order minimum requirement. What is the difference between the CP and the AN sensor? Good question. Those are both 10K thermistors, and the CP is our code for the 10K Type 2, and the AN is our code for the 10K Type 3. That's just our internal part numbering system. That's how we use to differentiate between the Type 2 and the Type 3 thermistors. Another question is, are you guys able to do site visits? We do site visits all the time. Whether or not we can come to your location is going to depend on a couple of things. First and foremost, are there any nice golf courses near your office? And how's the weather in the wintertime? Just kidding. We do site visits all the time. Myself and the other sales engineers get out on the road numerous times a year. We do trade shows and dealer networks. And so we're happy to do site visits as well. Let's look for some other questions here. What's the difference between an RTD and a thermistor? Good question. They're different natures. They're kind of like apples and oranges, both fruit, but they're going to be different in how they react and how they measure a temperature. They're both resistive outputs. An RTD is typically what we call PTC, that's positive temperature coefficient. So that means as the temperature increases, the resistance increases, whereas a thermistor is what we would call NTC, it's negative temperature coefficient. So as the temperature increases, the resistance goes down. They have some different characteristics. RTDs are generally more accurate than thermistors, whereas the thermistors typically have a finer resolution. Thermistors typically aren't affected as much by longer lead runs, whereas RTDs can be affected if you have to run a lead over 30 or 50 feet. That increased lead runs actually increases the resistance and can affect the output. Another main difference is RTDs are linear in nature, whereas thermistors have a curve to it, so they're non-linear. And as a result, RTDs are typically better for very high temperature, very low temperature applications. Over the years, thermistors have become much more common, and they now represent the vast majority of the sensors that we build and ship here at ACI. Another question is, do you offer combination sensors, humidity and temp, CO2 and temp? Absolutely. The vast majority of our sensors are available in combination. Like this enclosure, you can put a humidity sensor in. This enclosure, you can put a humidity sensor in, and you can put a CO2 sensor in this enclosure as well. And we can do a combination temperature and CO2 sensor in this enclosure. So we can do combination sensors, temp and humidity in duct, room, outside air configurations. Why would I choose the R2 housing over a regular room housing? It's cosmetics, it's aesthetics. There's no difference as far as the functionality or the performance of this sensor versus the Infinity or the R enclosure. It's just a matter of what you or your customer like the look of better. Me personally, I like the looks of this enclosure better. I like the bright white. It stands out and it looks cleaner and nicer on the wall than, to my eye anyway, than the off-white or the beige enclosure. I think when we put a customer's logo on this, that the logo stands out really nicely on this enclosure as well. But functionally, there's no difference between the R2 or the Aries enclosure and the Infinity. They are a little different shape. Obviously, they're both designed to cover a 2x4 handy box, and the bases are a little different shape as well. So you can't just swap out the cover of this one with the cover of the Infinity enclosure as well. With that said, that concludes our presentation today. If there's any additional questions or information that I can get to you, please feel free to reach out. My contact information is on the left-hand side of your screen. And I look forward to seeing you all again on August 24th during our gas sensor webinar. Thanks for joining us. Please check out our website as well, which is www.workaci.com. Thanks again and have a great day.